is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
It's a beautiful day for a new episode of Encore. Hey, I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of U2's Beautiful Day. When the landmark Las Vegas Sphere opened up in September of 2023 with its $2.3 billion price tag, its 300 tons of steel, 16K resolution screens, 1,600 speakers, and 4D machines capable of pumping in wind, scent, and more into the venue, there was never any doubt that there was only one band in the world capable of matching the Sphere's fantastical ambitions, and that band was the iconic U2. At the time of recording, U2 has just finished this unprecedented concert residency at the Sphere, and as it stands right now, they're seemingly the only attraction that's formidable enough for the massive globe in the desert, although Fish and Dead & Company are going to give it a run for their money this spring. Nearly 500,000 people made the pilgrimage to the first 25 shows to see U2 at the Sphere, and the band ranked in nearly $160 million US, more than the entire North American leg of their Joshua Tree World Tour back in 2017. That tour, of course, was also legendarily known for its production value, winning Tour of the Year at the iHeartRadio Music Awards and Pollstar Awards for Major Tour of the Year, Rock Tour of the Year, and Most Creative Stage Production. I could, of course, go on. 2015's Innocence and Experience Tour grossed similar revenue, enjoyed just as glowing critical success, and was considered a boundary-pushing follow-up to 2009-2011's groundbreaking U2 360 Tour. If you're not picking up on a theme here, you should be. U2 puts on one hell of a live show, and people just cannot get enough of them. Except maybe for that one time that album was automatically downloaded in everyone's iTunes, but I digress. So then, just why do people flock to U2's stage shows? It's obvious that the theatre of it all, the technology, lights and soundscapes that the band brings, they are contributing factors, but just ask any artist, especially of U2's generation, and they'll likely tell you, it's all about the songs, man. And quite honestly, it would have to be all about the songs, because although I've listed off some of the group's accolades of the last 15 plus years, let's not forget, U2 formed in Dublin, Ireland in 1976. U2 had an unbelievably successful run from around 1980 all the way through until about 1997, culminating with their first Best Of collection released in 98 with such classics as Pride, In the Name of Love, New Year's Day, Sunday Bloody Sunday, Desire, and many more. During those years, the band won countless Grammys, a couple of international Juno Awards, and sold so many records. I'd probably have to start another purpose-built U2 podcast just to walk you through it all. Bono and Larry Mullen Jr. spoke with much as Rachel Perry about their hugely successful 80s and 90s, and were very candid about their contemporaries.
It's the 80s for us was a very, very serious roller coaster ride, and we became the biggest band of a decade that was full of crap music, and so it's no thing of pride.
So you think your music was crap?
No. I perished the thought.
The decade, you mean?
Perished the thought,
The
yeah.
decade was full, okay.
Yeah. In the 90s, we sort of chilled out a little bit and started to experiment on ourselves, experiment with our music. We realized that fame is a little bit silly, you know, whereas in the 80s we were kind of just didn't know how we felt about all that stuff, and then we realized it's kind of dumb, you know. Celebrity is kind of dumb. In fact, celebrity takes the piss out of you eventually.
Normally, in any band's career, this would probably be enough. You've had the better part of 20 years on top, with critical and commercial success rivaling literally any artist that ever lived. It's probably time to realize that your best days are behind you, right? Maybe go on hiatus, work on some side projects, or retire altogether on a private island. As Bono mentioned, the very concept of celebrity did seem pretty played out to him. Needless to say, U2 did not get that particular memo to take it easy because they did none of the above. And as the world prepared to roll over into a brand new millennium, U2 knew there was plenty a beautiful day to be had. Reuniting with Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno in late 1998, the latter of whom would eventually go on to produce Coldplay's Viva La Vida, which we discussed last year. U2 began working on demos for a new album that was allegedly almost named the slightly cringeworthy U2000. If you're not old enough to remember, everything in 99 and 2000 tried to make a play on Y2K, the millennium, or simply just tack on a 2000 to the end of any name to try and make it seem futuristic and cool. I'm looking at you, WrestleMania 2000. In any event, the band ditched the Y2K puns and went with the much more wistful All That You Can't Leave Behind as the title for record number 10. U2 were looking to return to the form that brought the world such classic records as The Joshua Tree and Achtung Baby, and wanted to create a record with a more traditional rock and roll sound than 1997's underwhelming pop album. Scheduling issues with the band and the producers pushed writing and recording through to 1999 with very little substance recorded or even written down. The band refused to rush the process, however. They'd done that for the pop record and were not pleased with the outcome. Eventually, in winter 99, the band would break ground as they were convinced by Daniel and Brian to write in studio together during recording, as opposed to simply writing songs that were pre-written by the band members separately. Further recording of the album was also done in the south of France. Bassist Adam Clayton and drummer Larry Mullen Jr. bought houses near Bono's so they could be closer together whenever inspiration hit. Must be nice. In a way, U2 was looking back in order to look forward. As Larry Mullen Jr. told Much, ultimately U2 was just 4 people in a room making music together. But there was also a sense of optimism and new beginnings with the new millennium turning over. Bono and Larry sat down with Much Music's Rachel Perry to discuss the overall vibes.
I feel at the moment really, not that interested in the past. Feels like starting again or something. And there's all the joy that goes with that, the beginning of a new century, and I think just, for us, just rediscovering, why we wanted to be in a band,
While channeling that optimism, it was becoming increasingly clear to Bono and the rest of U2 that in order to have self-respect, as Bono would put it, they would have to continuously strive to always be putting out fresher, better, and more powerful music than ever. When speaking with Rachel Perry, it almost seems like the band wanted to write off 20 years of superstardom completely to prove that they weren't a nostalgia act.
Music gives you self-respect?
Yeah, probably.
Why?
Because there's a sort of obvious contour in the life and the career of a band like U2, where you get to a certain place and you start to live off your past. We've seen this in groups in the past, gone by, and groups that we grew up, who blew my mind in the 70s, and then you just see them just turn into turgid, awful rock dinosaurs. And so the fear that might happen to us has kept us going and determined to prove ourselves and determined to make our best work.
The unrelenting drive of Bono and the band proved fruitful, as one of the songs conceived in that aforementioned little room was a song originally called Always. Bono and guitarist The Edge were playing around with a chord sequence but couldn't seem to get it up to U2 standards. In his memoir, Daniel Lanois admitted, quote, "The sound of it was a bit stuck in the bar room, and as usual, our expectations were high. We wanted to feel the future and not just the past." It was at this point that Lanois and Brian Eno took charge. One day before the rock stars joined the session, Eno and Lanois created a rhythm on a drum machine as well as guitar and piano parts that complemented The Edge's already existing guitar parts. By the time U2 arrived at the studio, the producer duo had captured lightning in a bottle. U2 jammed on the song for about 20 minutes before breaking for lunch. As they rapped, Bono sang, "It's a beautiful day, don't let it get away," and they went off to their sandwiches. Never once to waste an idea, Lanois and Eno reinserted the iconic vocals into a chorus section, and finally, Always was on its way to becoming Beautiful Day. For such a classic song, it's kind of hard to believe how much U2 almost got in their own way when it came to the recording of Beautiful Day. As I alluded to earlier, and as Bono recounts in his memoir Surrender, U2 was looking for an almost unattainable balance between the past and the future when recording this album. The band admittedly wanted the classic U2 sound, but they didn't want to sound like they were relying on the classic U2 sound in the year 2000. And a bit of frustration broke out in the recording sessions. Quote, "The first time I thought we might have pulled it off was recording the song that would become Beautiful Day. We were looking for some ecstatic quality. To sing a chorus like "It's a Beautiful Day," we needed some clouds parting, the sun coming out, some kind of road rising. Edge found it with that repeating echo of his that he made famous in the 1980s, but stumbling on the part this time. He was immediately embarrassed. We all were. Oh my god, that sounds like U2. The problem is, I ventured cautiously, it sounds like the Edge in U2. To which Edge offered the perfect response, I am the Edge in U2. I can sound like this if I want. The Edge would explain how the band managed to come to a settlement that would appease everyone. In the band's U2 on U2 book, quote, "It was because we were coming up with some innovative music that I felt a license to use some signature guitar sounds." Yeah, I mean, touché, The Edge. You do you. The song was finally completed when OG U2 producer Steve Lillywhite was also brought in to help with the final mixing, and Bono and The Edge continued to layer on guitar parts and tweak instrumentation as needed. Truly a team effort spanning multiple weeks and iterations, it's no surprise that Daniel Lanois ultimately called the finished product one of those little gifts where you think, my god, we've got it. In the official Beautiful Day, The Making of video, Bono broke down the meaning behind the song's message succinctly, saying,
Beautiful Day has the DNA of the album. It's got all the clues, in a way. It's this really optimistic song. It's about somebody who's lost everything. Their wife, their children, their girlfriend, whatever it is, okay? They've lost it all, but they've never felt better.
Over the years, Bono's opened up about the lyrical themes of Beautiful Day as well. Although he seemingly dismissed a lot of it at the time when discussing with Rachel Perry for Much Music, Bono was dealing with vocal issues in the late 90s and reckoning with his father's terminal cancer diagnosis.
I heard that during the making of the record, I overheard this in a radio interview quickly, that you lost your voice.
Yes.
Is this true? Yes.
Well, yeah, I had some difficulty with my voice over the last years. And maybe it was abuse, maybe it was just, not living right, and eventually I figured out what's wrong with it, and it took a while, but when my voice returned, it was certainly a thrill.
Is there something that happened as a band or personally that made you reconsider what really is truly important and what is truly necessary in your life?
Perhaps.
What would that be?
I think there's probably a few things, and I think that it would take away from them to describe. I think you've got to keep some things for yourself sometimes.
Okay.
But it's certainly there's certainly it's certainly a shock to lose people who are close to you, and sometimes it makes you ask very hard questions about your own life, or it makes you appreciate things that maybe you were missing. Simple things sometimes. Yeah. It's a very simple record. Though there are layers, they're not so hard to uncover.
In Surrender, his 2022 memoir through songs, Bono was a lot more honest about his motivations during the composition of Beautiful Day. Quote, "I'm thinking about my dad and that polyp in my throat, the lingering thought that I would have cancer too. The old man is dying and now his young fella's no longer young, no longer indestructible. How inconvenient. The trick would be not to give in to melancholy, to write with defiance as well as honesty." Throughout the song, Bono expertly transitions the feelings of defiant optimism in the face of personal loss into global metaphors. Within the lyrics, he speaks of the climate crisis and alludes to the freedom from the flooding post-Noah's Ark, all from a place of looking at the bigger picture. In his memoir, Bono likens the experience of the song as that of an astronaut looking down from space, quoting Neil Armstrong's line from Apollo's mission to the moon. "It suddenly struck me that tiny pea pretty in blue was the Earth. Everything and everyone that mattered to him he could cover with one thumb." While the band didn't go into space for the Beautiful Day music video, they did do the next best thing. Director Jonas Åkerlund filmed the band in various locations around Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, the same spot the album photography took place. The band plays in the hangar, the terminal, and the runway itself as planes take off and land around them. In all honesty, the video is pretty ham-fisted. It's certainly a pretty video, but it doesn't really inspire much awe. Sunrises and clouds intercut with performance footage and the band rushing around the airport trying to catch flights. There are star-crossed lovers reuniting and making out in the terminal, and peak 2000 special effects of the jumbo jets getting dangerously close to a passionately performing U2. Bono, for what it's worth, is the star of the show, bumbling around the airport, hugging the revolving doors, grabbing people's luggage, missing his car, riding the luggage carousel, and stealing a lady's apple. He explained how his performance was a metaphor for the song's message in the official making-of video.
The character I'd like to play is a little just more elated, as much as he's unhinged, free of worldly, earthly concerns is what I'd like.
While the video for Beautiful Day may not have won any awards or received any critical acclaim, the same cannot be said for the song itself. The song was a critical darling upon its release, with The Guardian swooning over its bustling beat, contagious chorus, and vintage guitar chimes from Edge. Rolling Stone remarked on the fact that the song, like much of the album, didn't fade with repeated listening. David Brown of Entertainment Weekly's review probably haunted Bono's nightmares if he saw it, stating that the classic U2 arrangement was corny but damn effective, and that it reminded him of the band's first wave of glory in the 80s. NME did play contrarian, suggesting cruelly that John Lennon's assassin should be released from prison with the sole intention of shooting Bono. That's a bit much, isn't it? The song went to number 1 on the Canadian singles chart and the US dance and adult alternative charts, but surprisingly, only went to number 21 on the Hot 100 proper. Beautiful Day alone propelled All That You Can't Leave Behind to double platinum status in the States, and the album would tack on another 2 million record sales to that feat by the time the album cycle finished. U2 absolutely cleaned up at the 2001 Grammy Awards, with Beautiful Day winning Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group. Interestingly enough, U2 has the rare distinction of going back-to-back at the Grammys with All That You Can't Leave Behind's fourth single, Walk On, winning Record of the Year in 2002. As if they needed any more accolades, you probably guessed it, they're the only band to ever have 2 singles win Record of the Year consecutively off the same album. At the time, all of this success probably felt like an isolated comeback story for the band and its critics. But of course, now with nearly 25 years hindsight, we know where all of this went next. Hundreds of millions of dollars and a giant sphere in the desert. In 2002, U2 ran a victory lap and released their second best-of collection, songs from 1990 to 2000, before modernizing themselves again in 2004 with their epic How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. But I'll save the stories behind singles on that album for another time. Anyway, I've got to leave you here because I'm at the airport and I've got a flight to catch, and I think Bono's over here stealing my luggage and my apple. Have a beautiful day. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of U2's Beautiful Day on Encore, with new episodes out every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.